So, coming back to the next topic in the pharmaceutical microbiology, we are going to discuss today about the classification of different microorganisms or different bacteria based upon different types of techniques. So, we are going to classify bacteria or microorganisms based upon the staining techniques. That means, so when we add a particular type of stain to a particular type of bacteria which is taken in the microscopic slide, so that particular bacteria would obtain a particular color with the presence of alcohol or other staining agents. So based upon the color which has been observed under the microscope, we would classify them into different types of bacteria. So that would be the one type of classification. So classification based on the Gram staining technique or any other staining techniques. So how do this particular Gram staining technique or any other staining techniques works? Especially when it comes to the Gram staining technique. So this has been discovered by the scientist named as H.C. Gram in 1884, and hence it is also named after the scientist Gram, called as Gram staining. And it is important technique until this day because it has been utilized or used in the laboratories to determine or to differentiate between the Gram positive or Gram negative bacteria. So coming to the Gram positive or Gram negative bacteria, or how do we differentiate between them by using the staining technique. So first we are going to add a particular type of Gram staining or Gram stain which would be in violet color or the crystal violet, which is commonly used stain in the or dye which is used in the Gram staining technique. So we would take a microscopic slide and we would inoculate or we would transfer a bacteria, a cell or microorganism to that microscopic slide. So now onto this microscopic slide or onto this particular slide which you have taken, we are going to transfer any sort of living cell or bacterial cell. Now to this bacterial cell we are going to add a crystal violet. Now after adding the crystal violet, you would wash that particular solution or wash off the excess amount of crystal violet or the dye which is present on the microscopic slide. So by letting the stain to absorb into the cell, what happens is the stain or the violet color would penetrate into the cell wall, and this cell constituents which are present, especially the lipid constituents or the cell constituents that are present inside the cell, would obtain or would take the Gram staining or the crystal violet, and those cells or those cell organelles would obtain the crystal violet color. Now after adding the crystal violet as well as after washing it off, we would add the alcohol too. So now the alcohol is a agent which helps in the sterilization purpose, as well as alcohol is also used as a dehydrating agent too. So now to differentiate between the Gram positive and Gram negative bacteria, so alcohol plays an important role. How? So how this plays an important role is, so alcohol acts as a agent which degenerates the lipids. So coming to the Gram positive and Gram negative bacteria, in the morphology of them, you would observe the presence of peptidoglycan in the cell wall of the Gram positive bacteria. So we are saying that we are going to differentiate between the Gram positive and Gram negative bacteria, isn't it, by using the Gram staining. So after adding the iodine as well as after crystal violet, iodine, what happens is with the help of the alcohol, what happens is that this degenerates the lipids which are present in the Gram negative bacteria. So the lipid constituents which are present in the Gram negative bacteria would be degenerated with the help of the alcohol. When it comes to Gram positive bacteria, we will observe less amount of peptidoglycans or less amount of lipid constituents in the Gram positive bacteria. So after adding the alcohol as well as it acts as a dehydrating agent, as well as it also acts as a constricting reagent too. So when we happen to rub against a particular wall or any bluish. So what happens? We would observe the rupture of the cell wall which is present on our skin, isn't it? So when you add or when you clean that wound or bluish which has been ruptured on our skin with the help of a spirit which contains alcohol, what happens? The cells that are present on that particular area would get constricted. So similarly, here the cell wall which has been degenerated, or the lipid constraints which has been degenerated with the alcohol. So subsequently what happens is that these cell walls which has been degenerated will also get constricted too. So now when it comes to the gram-positive one, since the peptidoglycans or the lipid constraint are lesser amount, only small amounts of holes are seen on the surface of the cell wall and they will easily get constricted. When it comes to the gram-negative bacteria, you would observe the presence of larger holes. So now when dehydration reacting or dehydrating action is happening, these larger holes may not get constricted completely, which leaves a hole or which leaves a space on the surface of the cell of the bacteria. So in the next step, after adding the crystal violet and after adding the alcohol, we will add the subsequent dye or stain which is called as iodine. Now iodine, after adding the iodine and after adding the subsequent stain which is called as saffirin, here it is also called as counter stain. So why do we add the saffirin? So what is the importance of saffirin? We had said that in the previous point, we had said that the surface of the gram-positive bacteria would have smaller holes and they would get constricted easily. That means they would get closed easily. On the surface of the gram-negative bacteria, what happens is that they wouldn't get constricted easily. That leaves the holes openly, right, like a pore. So now what happens is that the cell constituents which are present inside the cell would come out of these holes easily. That means already the cell constituents are stained with the violet color and they would seem as a violet color. So these violet color constituents or the cytoplasm which is present in the cell would come out of these pores easily, and that gives us a colorless cell. When it comes to gram-positive, the hole has been completely closed, so no constituent would come out of the cell. So they would be still in the violet color. But when it comes to the gram-negative bacteria, they would become colorless because the cell constituents which has been in violet color would come out. So the cells, then gram-negative bacterial cells would be in colorless condition and gram-positive bacteria would be in a violet color. Now when you add the saffirin in the next step, what happens is the cells, the gram-negative cells which are in colorless condition will obtain the saffirin and they will give us a pink or red color appearance. When it comes to gram-positive, since they are already in the crystal violet color, they cannot take this counter stain which is called as saffirin and they will still appear as a violet color under the microscope. So now we can differentiate between the gram-positive bacteria as well as gram-negative bacteria by using the counter stains as well as the gram stain. Gram stain is nothing but the crystal violet, and further iodine is also used or added to that particular crystal violet color because this acts or this intensifies the violet color. Later we will add subsequently alcohol and later again we will add the saffirin too. Now coming to the next one. So here we are going to classify the bacteria based upon the shape, and this has been first identified or first classified or first discovered in the year 1872 by the scientist known as Kohn. Now he had classified the bacteria into 4 major types based upon the shapes. Now the first type is Cocci, the second one is Bacilli, Vibrio and Spirilla. So these are the 4 main classes of the bacteria based upon this shape. So now coming to Cocci, what are these? So these are generally the bacterial cells which are unicellular as well as they are either spherical or elliptical in shape. So we don't know the difference between the spherical. Spherical is completely round. When it comes to the elliptical, they are like oval, isn't it? Now coming to the Cocci, so these are the unicellular cells or these are mostly in spherical shape or in the elliptical shape, and they would be either remain as a single cell or they are grouped or bunch. They are seen in the bunches, and they would aggregate. Bunches are nothing but they would aggregate. One cell would aggregate with another, and they would be seen in the form of various configurations. So based upon this aggregation or based upon this configuration, they are also further classified, subclassified into several types. The first one is monococcus. Monococcus means, so they are also called as micrococcus because they are represented by single cell. We wouldn't observe any sort of aggregation of cells in this type. Okay, so they are discrete or single, as well as they would be in round shape. An example is Micrococcus flavus. Now coming to the next one, the next subtype is of Diplococcus. So monococcus means single. When it comes to diplo, we would observe two cells. So when we had said that the single cells would get aggregated, the Diplococcus is nothing but here the cell of the Diplococcus divides the one bacterial cell into planar, so that they would be appeared or they would be seen into two different cells. But even after division, they would remain attached to the one cell, one another. Understood? So one particular single cell, when divided, they would be appeared into, or they are divided into two individual cells, but still even after the division they would remain attached to one another, which appears as a bunch of cells which are called as Diplococcus. Now the example for this Diplococcus bacterial cells are Diplococcus pneumoniae. Now coming to the next one, which is Streptococcus. So the next subtype is Streptococcus. Now here we would observe the single cells is divided repeatedly, which gives us formation of chain of cells. So coming to the previous one, when you have observed a single cell is divided into two cells, even after the division they have remained attached to one another, which seems to us like a two bunch of cells. Now then it is called as Diplococcus. Now coming to the next one, when it comes to Streptococcus, this single cell has been divided continuously to form a chain of cells repeatedly, which is called as Streptococcus, and the example for Streptococcus bacteria is Streptococcus pyogenes. Coming to the next subtype, it is called as Tetracoccus. Now this Tetracoccus is nothing but, so tetra means 4, mono means single, diplo means 2, and tetra means 4. So here we will observe the presence of 4 round cells, and which would be in right angles to one another, and they are called as now the example for the Tetracoccus bacterial cells is Guthrie tetragena. Now coming to the next one, here we have already observed the presence of Streptococcus. So what is the difference between the Streptococcus and Staphylococcus is, here a single cell would be divided multiply or repeatedly, which gives us number of cells which are arranged in the chain manner. Now coming to the Staphylococcus, here also same one is observed. That means a single cell is divided multiple times repeatedly, so that we would get bunch of cells. But these bunch of cells are arranged in irregular manner, but not in a straight line, which happens to appear to us like a bunch of grapes. Okay, and the example for this particular type of classification of the bacteria is Staphylococcus aureus. Now coming to the next classification or next class, it is of bacilli. So in the previous one, what is the previous class which we have studied is that coccus, right? So coccus is nothing but this spherical or elliptical shaped bacteria. When it comes to the bacilli, so these are rod shaped bacteria or cylinder shaped bacteria, not the not the elliptical, but it's a rod shaped bacteria. Now coming to the bacilli. So the example for this type of bacteria is Bacillus aureus. And now coming to the next type of bacteria, which is called as Vibrio. The next class is called as Vibrio, and Vibrio are nothing but they are comma shaped bacteria or curved bacteria. So the comma shaped or curved bacteria, which is commonly represented as a single genus of bacteria. Now coming to the example for this particular type of bacteria is nothing but Vibrio cholerae, which is responsible for the disease called as cholera. Now coming to the next type of bacteria, Spirilla. So here the type of bacteria we will observe would be seen like a spring or cord. So here the shape of the bacteria, in the previous ones, the cocci, we had seen the shape of the bacteria as a round or spherical ones. The bacilli, we have observed the shape of the bacteria as a rod shaped ones. Now coming to the Vibrio, we had observed that the shape of the bacteria would be in comma or curved shape. Now coming to the Spirilla, here we would observe that the bacteria would be in the shape of the spiral or spring shape. So here the example, somewhat this would seem like a telephone cord, landlines which we would have in our childhood. So how the telephone cord looks like, the shape of the bacteria would also looks like that. And the example is Spirillum volitans. And the other examples or other classes would be Actinomycetes, where in the Actinomycetes you would observe the filamentous structures on the surface of the bacteria, and there would be like the variations which comes from the sun, the diagram which we used to draw in our childhood. So these are the example for Actinomycetes. Now coming to the next type of classification, this type of classification is completely based on the mode of nutrients they are taking, or that particular type of bacteria are taking. So here we will observe the first class of bacteria as a phototrophs, and here in the phototrophs you will observe that the bacteria are gaining energy. That means they are requiring their nutrition, or they are requiring or they are obtaining their nutrients from the sunlight. And again in these phototrophs we would observe two types of subclasses. One is photolithotrophs and the other one is photoorganotrophs. Coming to the photolithotrophs, here the bacteria would obtain the nutrients from the sunlight, but they are also obtaining their nutrients from the inorganic compounds, but not the organic compounds. The difference between the organic and inorganic is that, so the carbon containing compounds are called as organic, when the other elements comes under the inorganic compounds. So here along with the light, the bacteria is gaining the energy from the reduced inorganic compounds like H2S. And the example for this type of bacteria is called as Chromatium ocani. Now coming to the photoorganotrophs, if this is a lithotrophs is obtaining energy from the light as well as inorganic compounds, here the bacteria is obtaining energy from the light as well as organic sources such as succinate. Now these bacteria completely gain energy from the chemical compounds, and they cannot perform photosynthesis. If they can photosynthesize, they don't have to gain energy, or they don't have to depend upon any other substance, isn't it? Now coming to the next class, they are called as autotrophs. So what are autotrophs? Here we had said that in the previous one, when it comes to the phototrophs, they are obtaining the energy from the sunlight, isn't it? Now coming to this particular autotrophs, they are obtaining the energy from the carbon dioxide. So plants do require carbon dioxide for its photosynthesis. So the carbon source, this particular plant would, or this particular bacteria do not have to depend upon any other carbon substances or organic substance, but carbon dioxide alone would act as a carbon source over here. Now coming to the two subtypes in this autotrophs, one would be the photoautotrophs and the other one would be the chemoautotrophs. So in the photoautotrophs, what they use is, So in the photoautotrophs, they would assimilate the carbon dioxide, and here similar to the previous one, this carbon dioxide, the carbon which is present in the carbon dioxide alone acts as a carbon source. Now coming to the chemoautotrophs, so here they would assimilate, they would dissimulate the, or they would utilize the chemical energy from the carbon dioxide. Now coming to the heterotrophs. In the heterotrophs, you will observe that the carbon source would be the organic compounds, and they do lack the efficiency or ability to fix the carbon dioxide. Coming to the previous one, in the autotrophs, we had observed that carbon dioxide is a sole source of energy, and in that we had observed photoautotrophs as well as the chemoautotrophs. In the photoautotrophs, light is utilized for the carbon dioxide. Here in the chemoautotrophs, no light is utilized. But coming to the heterotrophs, here also we are observing that carbon dioxide is used as the organic compound or organic source, but they do not have an ability to fix them in their particular cells. Now how do they fix the particular nutrients, or they are getting the nutrients, is they are going to depend upon the other organic compounds for its energy sources, and they need to depend upon the other nutrients too. Coming to the next step of classification of bacteria, here the different classes of bacteria are categorized based upon the oxygen requirement of that particular bacterial cell. Now coming to the bacterial cells, we will observe presence of two types of bacteria. One is the obligate aerobes, and the other one would be the facultative anaerobes. Apart from these, you would also observe the presence of obligate anaerobes and also aerotolerant anaerobes. So what are these four types of classes of the bacteria based upon the oxygen requirement? So first coming to the obligate aerobes. So obligate is nothing but they are necessary or highly important. Without them, these bacterial cells cannot live. That means aerobe means in the presence of oxygen. So these bacterial cells do require the oxygen for their living. Now, example for this type of bacteria is Pseudomonas as well as nosocomial pathogens. Now coming to the facultative anaerobes, they do use the oxygen. They can use the oxygen, but they cannot grow in its absence. So here we had said that they do require oxygen to live, but what is the difference between the aerobes as well as anaerobes, facultative anaerobes, is that here they do require, if oxygen is present, they would survive. But even if the oxygen is not present, even in that case they would survive. Okay, and they do have this complex set of enzymes so that this particular cell would be prepared even in the absence of the oxygen. They can properly maintain its functions. Example for these type of bacteria are many types of bacteria like E. coli, Staphylococcus, yeast, as well as other intestinal bacteria which is present or which are included in our medical biome. Now coming to the next type of bacteria, here the next class is obligate anaerobes, and here we are saying that the facultative anaerobes, they do use or they do live even in the presence of oxygen, and even if oxygen is not supplied, even then they can live. But when it comes to the obligate anaerobes, compulsory, obligate is nothing but that is required. So they are not lived or they cannot be lived in the presence of oxygen. If oxygen is present, the bacterial cells would get harmed. And the example for this type of bacteria is Clostridium bacteria as well as several other bacteria which causes the tetanus as well as botulism. Now coming to the next type of, or the last type of bacterial class is that aerotolerant bacteria. So they cannot use oxygen but tolerance is present. Then what is the difference between the previous facultative anaerobes and aerotolerant anaerobes is that even if oxygen is present, that is not harming them. Even if oxygen is present, that is not harming them means you may think that that is similar to the facultative anaerobes, but no. If oxygen is present, the bacteria will be capable of utilizing that oxygen. But here, even if the oxygen is present, the bacteria is not capable to use that particular oxygen which is present over there. So these are called as air-tolerant oxygen, and they can break down, they do have this capacity to break down the oxygen. And the example is lactobacillus, which carries the fermentation process. Lactobacillus is the one bacteria which carries the fermentation of the milk, and it produces the curd, or it converts the milk into curd, isn't it? Even this happens even in the absence of oxygen or in the presence of oxygen too. So this is about the classification of bacteria based upon the staining techniques as well as based upon the morphological characteristics. Thank you.